Hello again and welcome back for another review. This time it's about the newly released KZ Merga, I think it is pronounced, which is another budget IEM released by KZ that falls into the same price range as the Caster and the EDX Pro X, for example. It's just around 14 euro here. And these two were pretty positively received and fared really well with most listeners. I was really curious about the Merga too. But let's just get right into it and start with build quality. So KZ has a few different housings that they use for their IEMs. For example, the Caster was really cheap but had this pretty heavy metal housing, while the EDX Pro X had this see-through plasticky and really light housing, which does not mean that it's not sturdy or something, just a different style here. And the Merga definitely falls in line with the lighter and just overall more plasticky feeling IEMs. As you can see, the shell is completely see-through and is made of some resin and feels really light. I do think the design is pretty fancy with the driver housing that you can see from the outside. Just looks a bit cool. Again, it's way lighter than, for example, the Caster, which is the same price range, and the Merga in comparison does feel cheaper. That does not mean it is a worse build. If it's lighter, it also does not fall down with such force. So that's a plus side of lighter IEMs, I guess. But yeah, I think it's fine. It's kind of the same as the EDX Pro X or the Tangsu Warner, and these were fine too. Just a different style of the housing here. Cable, I mean, it's a typical KZ cable. Nothing more to say. It's a cable. I mean, what do you expect at 14 euro? It's okay. Regarding comfort, well, just as a lot of the other KZ IEMs, the Merga are pretty comfortable too. Since they are pretty light, they aren't really prone to falling out of your ear, and the nozzle is also not too big, so I do not have any issues with them getting uncomfortable or hurting my ear. And with the included KZ kind of cloth silicone mix ear tips, it's pretty easy to get a seal. So I'm pretty positive that most people will have no issues with the fit of the Merga here. So finally, sound, and oh boy, recently KZ updated a lot of their lineup and released IEMs left and right, and most of them had pretty understandable tunings, sometimes more bass, sometimes better extended and brighter treble, and just not too extreme in any way. The Merga here is different. It is a hugely treble and upper mid-range focused IEM. You can already look up the graph since other people already measured it, and it's basically an IEM that emphasizes everything from the upper mid-range up until the mid-treble by a lot. So obviously this is a very different tuning than most of the IEMs you know, and a good bright tuning is actually pretty hard to execute. Another example would be the Tin Hi-Fi T2 MK2, which I reviewed a while ago, which I did not really like because it was very bright, which some people may do like, but it also had a huge lack of mid and lower bass, and it was just really weird sounding with the bass. But at least it had a nice mid-range, but that's not enough in our modern IEM world. And when I say lack of bass, I do not mean that an IEM should be bass heavy. I like more neutral tuned headphones and IEMs, but you need to be able to hear it in a song. Neutral does not mean no bass, but very tight, clean, and controlled bass that can take a step back when it comes to the other frequencies, but it's obviously still there. So obviously KZ had a thought process here with the tuning. And I really do not think I am the target audience here. So maybe that review is really subjective, but still, I'm telling you what I hear and you decide for yourself. So I do not think a lot of listeners will like the Merger, but as always, let's start with the bass. Again, there's not a lot of bass. The Merga is really bass light. There's a little bit of lower bass that can be heard and gives at least a bit of a foundation there, but no rumble, no punch, no full-bodied bass guitars or impactful kick drums, which all sound pretty limp. There's just really no weight in the lower notes, and the whole scene feels very flat and kind of small without the depth that bass notes can give to your music. Sometimes it was even hard to hear certain bass instruments because they were put so much into the back and because their whole frequency spectrum is toned down so much. If you dislike bass, which you very well may do, then maybe you like that. Going further into our beloved mid-range, well, the emphasis starts at around 1000 hertz, and before that it's also quite de-emphasized, which means there's quite a bit of fullness missing here. And especially male voices, for example, just sound really thin and kind of hollow. But then the mid-range shoots up after 1000 hertz, and with that, it sounds absolutely tinny with rock stuff, electronic stuff, metal, rap, all these genres. I give it that it's less harsh than I thought. And from then on, it's actually not bad. The upper mid-range and treble is again pretty elevated, but it's not that bad, even for me. It has actually pretty good clarity. They tuned that part of the frequency quite evenly bright. It's not peaky, there's no overboarding sibilance or piercing sharpness, and instruments like cymbals shine quite nicely. And I like female vocals here, even though they do also miss some fullness, but they still sound nice and expressive. I mean, it's still easily more harsh than other IEMs, but that's the nature of bright tunings. It's just that in combination with the absolutely de-emphasized bass and the other half of the mid-range, it makes it sound pretty strange, and you always have to look at the whole picture here when it comes to tuning. So to summarize that, again, a bright tuning is hard to execute in a good way. In my opinion, they should have put maybe 2 dB across the whole bass and mid-range section. It would still be very bright and treble focused, but that here is just too much. And just a bit more on the other frequency sections would have helped a lot, because the section they did focus on is not that bad. But without that, and like it sounds just out of the box, it's not for me. It just sounds like a shiny tin can. Since this is a really new IEM, I hope I could give you an additional perspective here and help you in your everlasting quest to find the best budget IEM. See you next time then. Goodbye.